Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. I'm Anthony Giuliano, and my guest this week is Rob Henry. Rob, how you doing?
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a interview in the making for quite some time, so I appreciate you finally doing it. And thanks for the gifts, by the way. It's the season, I guess.
'Tis the season.
Yeah, and I can help you advertise one of your businesses as I go about my work.
We appreciate that.
So you have 4 kids.
Correct.
Of a wide swath of ages. What does the holidays look like in your house?
Good question. It's busy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But everyone's in the festive mood. Last
Yeah.
night my daughter and I actually strung up the lights.
Oh, wow.
We got home, and obviously it's dark by the time we get there. But yeah, the neighbors watching me climb that 30-foot extension ladder,
geez.
and my wife said, "Well, you used to go up that thing a lot faster." She's like, "You kind of slowed down a little bit." I was like, "Well, getting wiser, right?" So we got that done, and a lot of Elf on the Shelf.
All right.
There's a lot of that going on every night. Trying to stay original with all that stuff. And
now, was your oldest Elf on the Shelf vintage, or did this come later?
This came later.
All right.
Yeah, a little bit later.
Yeah.
Mainly with my girls. Yeah.
Okay.
So luckily, this has only been it's maybe 5 or 6 years, but it's a lot.
Why did we
stress
do this as parents? Why did we decide this is another thing we need to do?
Someone wanted to sell the elves, right?
Well, and sell the elves they have. So
the marketing behind it would have told us all not to do that, right? But, the school with all the kids at school, telling them, telling all their friends, here's what's going on, so everyone gets an elf.
Yeah, it would have caught up to us eventually.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for doing this, especially given how busy this time of year is for you with 4 kids and all the other things you're doing. I wanted to start by talking about your career path. And if I'm reading your LinkedIn profile right, it's kind of interesting. So what I'd like you to do, Rob, is talk about what you were thinking about doing when you were younger and where that led you, and then when and why did you pivot to something different?
Sure. And we've got a full hour.
Yeah, and it might take that long just to get through this one question.
Right.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I probably need to make sure the LinkedIn profile is all up to date. But so I started working probably at a young age, 15 years old. I think my dad got a hold of me one day. It's like, well, I got you a job. And I said, well, I wasn't really looking for a job, Dad. You kind of get that glare. So.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, I'll start in a few weeks. It's summer. It's like, well, you'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow, Saturday. And so then it began. So I went to work for a company he was working for at the time, and it's Tippmann Affiliated Group. The company I technically worked for at the time was Tippmann Refrigeration.
Yep.
So we did a lot of odds and ends, mainly your maintenance type things, lawn mowing, plowing the snow, building maintenance. A lot of things that I didn't really know how to do or wasn't versed well in, and it was a great learning experience.
And they were willing to train you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say, here's a kid who has, not a lot of skills.
Yeah.
No offense, neither did I.
Yeah, absolutely. And they just said, well, we're going to work him. And
okay.
And that's one thing that that I probably did get from my dad, and his reputation was he was a hustler. Like there wasn't in his prime, like you weren't going to outwork the guy.
Yeah.
So I think they knew what they were getting, and they did. They worked the daylights out of us.
Yeah.
We would mow lawns all day, like in the summers, and our founder had a farm and this huge property, and it's 5:00 and we're thinking we're all done for the day, and the next thing you know, there comes these tractors with bales of hay on the back end of them, and like, well, we're baling hay this week. What's that entail? I didn't know. I didn't live on a farm. I grew up in the suburbs. So it was hard work, and just a lot of that. So, but we persevered, right? There's a big group of us that kind of all came in about the same time. My boss at the time was a few years older than I was, but he was very diligent in his management, and he wanted us there. He taught me a lot about being on time, being open to take the overtime. It's just outside of our control sometimes, and all these things. So it really. Him and the other people around us at the time, they did a great job of probably instilling a lot of good principles in what we were supposed to do.
So just work ethic.
Just work ethic.
Skills that transfer to every job. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was when I was 15, and every year things got a little bit more and more acclimated to now we're comfortable doing these things, or someone else hired in to do some lawns. So that means you're going to go help with this maintenance project at this company. So it's just a lot of learning and grinding, along the way for years. And it got me all the way through high school. And obviously my senior year in high school, I'd worked there for 4 years at the time. And I kind of talked to some of the owners, and I was like, I'd really like to. I don't know what I'm going to go to college for, right? And I've got about a year and a half to figure that out with electives, and I knew I was going to stay in town at IPFW. I really liked the campus. Not many people from my family went to college, but I knew, my grades were decent in high school, so I knew it was something I probably needed to do and wanted to do. And so I did. But I asked them if I could get more involved in more of a business aspect, and everyone was more than open to that. So I started working from the ground up in one of the companies that was called Thermodyne Food Service Products. So we manufacture a ton of food service equipment, mainly for restaurants. And I started right on the shop floor, like assembling shelves and assembling sub-assemblies for different parts and components. And it's all electric, right? So stainless steel comes in the building in the sheet form. We form it, weld it, assemble everything, and out the door it goes. So I just, for a year, I sat there and did all these different tasks and responsibility on the shop floor and learned a lot of that.
Is this another case where you were using skills you had, or you were learning on the job?
Learning on the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
A ton.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, just, and at that age, your brain's plastic.
Oh,
right?
sure.
Just taking it all in.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I would sit in these meetings with some people, and the owners and his sons and a lot of people he surrounded himself with are just ingenuity. I mean, just they hold patents, very highly regarded to intellectual property, in that type of regard. Heat transfer, refrigeration were a lot of the things that we specialized in, and so I started to learn a lot of this, and I just kept kind of kept going, and for a brief minute, I thought, engineering kind of like piqued my interest. We're sitting in these meetings. These guys know what the steam table are, about it, like the back of their hands, like what temperature, water's going to boil at under pressure, and all these types of things. A cubic foot of water turns into 17. It expands 1,700 times to steam, and all these things just kind of were like really like eye-opening to me. Like, these guys know this stuff. Like,
that stuff makes my head hurt. So
so it was pretty cool, and so I got a little bit more involved. Again, more involved with the company, and I just kind of kept thinking about it. I was like, we've got a bunch of engineers, and I see how these guys work, and I don't want to paint any pictures for all engineers, but a lot of them just put their heads down.
Oh, sure. Sure.
So I just didn't know if that was for me either. But it was getting close. And, I needed to start to figure out what my major was going to be.
Sure.
So I started to think a little bit more about. I didn't want to be in the sales side, but I kind of liked that aspect of it. And a lot of the things that I knew that we were doing in marketing was kind of based around the trade shows that we did. They would always need help. They always need a driver to go to a show, load, unload, help set up. And so I went to a couple trade shows, and I was kind of blown away. The first time I went to the McCormick Center in Chicago, I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like, is this for real? So then I started to get a little bit more fascinated with that, and I kind of just looked at our company structure, and it was like, we're so technical, very technical, very smart engineers, and just like I said, the intellectual property is very strong. Our sales teams were good, but I noticed that there was a gap there. Like, there's no marketing department. It always just seemed to like fall on so and so will just do that mailing campaign. Our CRM,
so it was bolted on to other jobs.
It was, and our CRM system was not a CRM system. It was a glorified Rolodex with names.
Sure.
So I was like, I'm gonna take a couple classes and just see. And again, like when I started college, my grades were decent. I would say they were decent, but I did have that moment. I'm gonna kind of go back because I remember Dr. Burton. He was a sociology teacher, and it was a class I had to take. And there were some friends of mine in the class from my high school, and one day after class, he kind of pulled me in his office. He said, "Listen, I know you got through in high school, and I went to a good high school. Bishop Dwayne's a great high school, right?" He's like, "But it's not going to cut it. Like, it's just not. So either get on with it, like quit wasting your money and just drop out because
Wow.
like you need to be here.
Yeah.
Like I know everyone tells you like college is college and you can show up if you want, but
Yeah.
he's like, you're going to fail out.
Wow.
You know, and he was very, very abrupt. And I didn't know what or why he chose me.
Yeah.
But clearly he saw something, you know, and so I always remembered that moment, you know, and I kind of buckled down and I started putting in more time and effort.
Yeah.
Because I did. I wanted to graduate.
Sure.
That was my goal.
Yeah.
So then I fast forward to where we are to getting into like the marketing side.
Yeah.
And I always think like I always felt like my parents never really said this, but I always felt like I had like a little bit of ADD. Like I couldn't, if I was doing things I didn't really like want to do or enjoy doing, like I had a hard time focusing on
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And then I start taking some of these intro classes and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
Like I really like this. And I'm working full time, going to school.
Yeah.
And I start taking some like what I'm having issues with at work to like class. And I'm like, these are real like case studies.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
this
for
is, like-
sure.
And my professor at the time were like, yeah, this is great. Like we
Yeah.
can use this. Like,
Yeah.
You know, and so I just started getting really into it.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, like as soon as I got into the Dormer School of Business, like I made honor roll. Like I made the dean's list like every semester.
Well, it sounds very similar to my experience, and you know, I think this is what I hear you saying. For me, when I was in school, if I wasn't interested, I was the least interested person you were ever going to find. But if I was the most interested person you were going to find, and there was really no gray area. Either I cared or I
None.
didn't. And once I figured out what I was interested in, I was off to the races. But it was pretty tough getting there.
It was very tough getting
Yeah.
there, right? But again, so it kind of kept developing.
Yeah.
And then my senior, it took me a little bit longer because I was working full time.
Yeah.
So about 2000, let me see, 2005. Like that's when like the master classes start. Like
Yeah.
like right.
Yeah.
And so I meet a couple more professors and these guys really start like. They like me, like,
Yeah.
and I would talk to them about real world stuff
Yeah,
that I'm
sure.
going through, and I think it just helped me navigate through it like with a lot more ease. And you know, IPFW at the time was more of like a commuter school, so like I literally told the professor, I was like, listen, like I'm 2 or 3 years older than half these kids.
Yeah.
Like they don't have,
Yeah.
I mean, they're working at Best Buy and something like,
Yeah.
so they don't know what I know. So
Sure.
it's like not fair to put me in a category above them. But so it was just fun, you
Yeah.
know, and it was just a really, really intriguing to me, and that's when I kind of like figured it out. Like this is what I'm going to do
Yeah.
because I really enjoy it.
So let me make sure I've got one thing straight. So your first job ever was with a Tippmann affiliated group company, and that's the only company you've ever worked for.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty unique.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so the founder was Vincent Tippmann, and he took a liking to me for whatever reason, but he gave me a lot of chances, opportunities. But as we're going through this, you know, I kind of set myself up to like, well, I can work here because I think if I do this right, I can position myself right out of college into a marketing spot.
Yeah.
But I also knew, you know, with a good education, I knew my grades were great. I knew at the time I was, you know, in love. I knew what I wanted to provide for my wife and a family.
Yeah.
So I kind of like knew all this stuff, and I was like, well, I can either leverage that here and try to do this with this company because to me there was a need.
Yeah.
Or I can go. I may have a degree. I can go do whatever I want.
Sure.
I can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just how it played out. And so I get out of college, or graduate, and it's funny. I ended up like a credit short, like, and I didn't do a ton of like with the counselors. Like I didn't do a ton there because I was constantly on the go.
Yeah. Sure.
But it comes down to like a couple months before like May, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm a credit short now. And so again, one of my marketing professors, she's like, she knew it, and I talked to her about it. She's like, listen, we'll do a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
I'll get you the credits.
Yeah.
You'll be able to walk.
Yeah.
And we'll finish a program by July 1st.
Oh, wow. So
And
it's
it was
like
really-
a directed study.
It was a direct study. And it was, I was so grateful for her.
Yeah.
And so she gave me a couple topics. She's like, I want you to write a thesis on on this, or this, and she gave me these topics, and so this is 2007, and so one of the topics she gave me was Netflix versus Blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, Netflix was simply
DVDs in the mail.
DVDs in the mail,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to look at this and see, let's do a thought process here and a thesis on which one's going to prevail.
Yeah.
And we nailed it.
Yeah.
Right. Totally nailed it.
Yeah.
I don't think I had like the collapse of Blockbuster like as fast as it really went
Yeah,
down.
sure.
Like I didn't nail that part.
Yeah.
But, other than that, we just hit a home run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was great.
Oh, yeah.
And I was so grateful to her that she let me do that, and it got me through because I needed to be done. Like I'd married, I have a son, so like
oh, sure.
I really like needed.
And
to
you're
be,
working full time.
Yeah.
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 And
So-
you're probably starting to lose some of the momentum, and you want to just get on with it at
right.
that point. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one thing like I tell my boys mainly right now, just because they're of that age, like I wouldn't have been able to get through if I didn't have the resource, if I didn't use the resources that were available to me. I did a ton of tutoring.
Yeah.
I did a ton of help in college. I spent a lot of time in that library.
Yeah.
And then the study tables. So I always tell them I literally I'm never gonna be the smartest guy in the room. But if you work hard enough, you can get there.
Yeah,
You
sure.
can just, it's just all about how hard you want to work.
Yep.
And that's the other thing. If I know I'm not going to be the smartest guy in the room, I got to listen.
Yeah.
I want to listen, and that's one thing that marketing is great at too. You need to listen to the outside people,
Sure.
outside resources that are available to you. So it's just one of those things. It was, it's a great learning moment for them, and because sometimes they think Dad just walked on through, and it's not. It's never the case.
Well, it's a different experience when you are an adult student, and this isn't to take anything away from students who go the traditional route, but when things turned around for me as a student, it was when I was surrounded by adult students. I almost failed out of a school really hard to fail out of. I came back at night surrounded by adult students, people with jobs, people with families, some with both, and that's when it finally clicked for me, because I was like, oh, they're not really interested in me goofing off.
Right.
They're here to work and to learn because they have something at stake.
That's right.
And it sounds like that kind of propelled you to the finish line and beyond.
Yeah, and there's something to be said show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Right?
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
for
absolutely.
just that example
Absolutely.
right there. And you start. I joined the marketing club. I didn't even know there was one, but we did it. You know what I mean? So all these things are going on, and I started to really flourish because I was doing something I really thought that I could add a lot of value to.
Yeah. Yeah. So when do you start? You start right after graduation in a marketing role, or does that take some time?
Yeah. So I guess if we want to back that up a little bit from the work side. So all through college, I was working for Thermodyne, right? And I got to the point where I told the owners that I knew everything that was going on out there, how the processes flow, how the production line flowed, inventory controls. I instilled a lot of things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I ended up running the operations for 2.5 years at a very
Really
young age.
great experience at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, I was doing things, that my college friends were, they're hanging out on Friday nights and going to parties and here I am at work and then going to a Friday night speech class.
Yeah.
And then I got to be to work for inventory control on Saturday morning or whatever. But not to say that I never made it to campuses and saw my friends at Ohio State and Purdue and IU. So I got to see a lot of that too.
Yeah.
But it kept me out of probably a lot of trouble.
Yep.
And a lot of other things. And again, just the learning experience. So operations, we did that for a while. And as soon as I graduate, the shareholders were pretty open to me, hopping right into more of a brand management position for Thermodyne because I was so familiar with it.
Yep.
The customers, the salespeople. So it just transitioned pretty quick right into that. And we knew this was coming.
Yeah.
So we hired an operations manager. I actually hired him.
So
to
could
take
train
over.
alongside
Yep.
you. So did the marketing position you moved into, was that a new position and you were the first to be in that role? Okay.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
And that's where it gets a little interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
It took a little while to transition there. So I start brand management. So it's a lot of just online, and at the time, websites, they aren't what they are today. So there's a lot of that work.
Sure.
Just a lot of just account management. There's just a ton there.
Yep.
Making sure, brand books, all that good stuff. So I do that for about 2 years. And I still have this feeling like, all right, we're still missing out because I'm having to go ask this person or email a freelancer for a graphic arts piece or this. And we're not doing a ton of advertising. It was just a little like, I felt like something was still missing.
Yep.
And so I start to realize like, okay, the receptionist, she's a phenomenal graphic artist, right? And everyone kind of knew it, but like we didn't like leverage it properly for a while. And so I see that. And then we have a web administrator who was like digital. I mean, his digital savviness was just amazing. He's just so good. Younger than I was, but just could crank. But he's kind of doing his own thing, his own freelance thing.
Yeah.
But he wanted to try to do that, and he wanted a part-time position. And he said, if I can get 20 hours a week in here with you guys, it helps me build up my personal business. And okay, that'll work. So we've got that going on. I'm kind of working with them, and then coincidentally, we acquired Advanced Media Integration, which was a company that basically did a lot of duplication, replication of CDs, multimedia projects, and they digitized a lot of like 8 millimeters and that type of.
So take a VHS,
footage.
convert it to DVD.
Yeah. So with that came 2 guys, and one was, I mean, he still is a phenomenal. I mean. A videographer, camera, I mean, you name it, he can do it. And then the other was a technical writer. So I spent a little time with them on like little projects. And then, it's kind of like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I need to centralize this. And so like I'm doing my day job and I go to my boss at the time and I'm like, hey, I have an idea. I'm kind of thinking that, we don't have any efficiencies here with anything that we're doing. And everything that we do is reactive. Everything. Like it's reaction. We're not doing anything to be proactive. And he's like, no, I agree. I like it. And he's like, well, what are you thinking? So I kind of just pitch it real quick to him. He's like, better put some pen to paper, and kind of give me a full outline. And I'll have to sell this up. And at the time, I think most of the owners, they're comfortable with a lot of things outside of marketing. And it's not a slight, and I don't mean that in a bad way. These guys are geniuses in a lot of regards, hold patents and all the good stuff. But they just weren't sure about that aspect. So they all agreed, like, okay, let's do this. But we're going to try to keep it a low budget. And so we take an old office space and we kind of get everyone over there, and we created a department, right? And things just kind of grew from there. So that was, what'd I say, probably 2012.
Okay.
So we did that, and it just kept getting better and better. And just, you start getting a little bit more inertia, and things are moving, right? Things are rolling. We're starting to plan things out. So we have we use Basecamp for our all of our projects, right? So I'm pretty like OCD in a lot of regards. Like, I want things. I want files in a certain spot. I don't want to waste time looking for pictures and video that I know we already have. So we created that. And that was, at the time, that was what Chris brought to the table. Like, everyone brought a little something to the table. And, but you could tell, like, there was still, like, a little uncertain. Like, is this thing generating revenues? Where's this going? And I think we did a pretty good job for the first couple of years reacting it. And that, to me, was like, Vincent told me a long time ago, like, don't ever be the reason someone's waiting on something. Like get it done. Don't wait for tomorrow. Knock it out. And so we start handling these projects quick. And then we start running more campaigns, and they were a little bit more difficult to track back then, but the effort was there. And maybe you couldn't track everything as finitely as we can today. But so we keep moving, and people left along the way, and we brought a couple more people in, and now we're getting to a position where, like, I feel like we're really making progress. We were doing projects for almost every company and hitting our timelines, hitting milestones. But then I was still like, okay, I need to do a better job of tracking, like, what's really working. So then, you bring in the analytics side. You tighten everything up a little bit. And so about 20, I remember is 2015, March 11th, 2015, because it was my daughter's birthday.
Okay.
And I felt bad for a couple reasons, but my wife and I were supposed to go to a concert in Columbus, and our kids at that time were pretty young, so
Yeah.
it's like we didn't get many away trips,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And it wasn't even like an overnight thing. It was like, we're going to a concert in the afternoon, going to drive home afterward, be home late.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Vince, the founder of the company, he had this propensity to like call and it was great. He would call and just want to spend time, spend an hour here. And
Yeah.
he wanted to ingrain like his philosophy in all of us.
Sure.
He had a young group of management and sons. He had 12 kids, and all the sons or son-in-laws are involved in the business. And he's constantly wanting to make sure he's passing that philosophy on, because it troubled him.
Yeah.
Like it kept him up.
Sure.
So he would spend time with me and a lot of us, and I knew, like, when he called me, I knew I was done for an hour or two. I knew I was just done, you know? And so I'm trying to get out of town. You know, I'm trying to
Yeah.
leave early that
Yeah.
day, and he calls me. He says, "Hey, stop up." And he always just said that, "Stop up." And so I'd go up to the corner office.
Yeah.
And he says, "Hey, I just want to let you know we're losing so-and-so." And I said, "Well, what do you mean losing?"
This is an employee? Yeah.
It was actually my spirit.
Okay.
And he says he's an opportunity was brought to him. It was actually a Berkshire Hathaway company that offered him, and he wrestled with it.
Yeah.
And him and I get along today great. Get
Yeah.
along then better. You know, all is good with that relationship. But I thought, ooh, because he was my champion. Like I went to him for everything, and he would sell it. Right.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I was like, man, this is a bad day. You know? This isn't supposed to be happening today.
Yeah.
And he just kind of looked at me subtly and he said, "I just want you to know we trust you moving forward." And I says, and he always had a way of doing that to people. Like, so are you telling me, like,
Did you say what I just?
yeah,
I think you said.
Are you
yeah.
saying like this is like
Yeah.
mine to run with now?
Yeah.
Like, and he would just kind of leave you on the edge of your seat, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, "All right, we'll talk later." and so
Yeah.
you walk out of there, and you walk out of there, like, well, what just happened?
Yeah. Do I
Like,
have a new job? Am I in the same
Right,
job? Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And he built us up, right?
Yeah, sure.
It was just kind of some of the games he liked to play
Oh,
with
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And he did. And he brought me back in a few days later and he said, "You know, all the shareholders think that you can handle this. But you know, this is it. Like this is
Yeah.
you got to go and you got to prove it."
Yeah.
And a funny story. Let me go back to like college time with him too. Let me just elaborate one. So at the time, like I said, he was very engineering centric.
Yeah.
And I knew he was paying for a couple guys to like get some engineering classes under their belt. And so, you know, I thought, well, I mean, this college stuff isn't cheap because
Yeah.
I'm paying for everything.
Oh,
on my
sure.
own, right.
Sure.
And I thought, and I talked to some of the others, and like, hey, ask.
Yeah.
It was the worst going to happen.
If you don't ask, the answer is
Yeah.
always no. Yeah.
So I tell him I want to talk to him about, you know, college and all this stuff, and see if he'd, you know, be willing to help me out. And he said, "Well, let me ask you this." He said, "So you're going to a school right now, we're an institution, and you're paying them to give you an education, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I haven't asked you for a dime with the education I'm giving you." And, you know, you just
Yeah.
like, and that was him. That was
Yeah.
Vince to a T, you know.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, let's be thankful that I'm not charging you for the education I'm
Yeah.
giving you."
Yeah.
And he was right, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, sure.
Real world.
That's not
and-
what you expect.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. But man, I just walked out of there and giggled about it,
Yeah.
whatever. And he got a giggle. I'm sure a lot of people did, but it was funny. But that's just who he was.
Oh, sure.
And it's just, I loved him, you know,
Yeah.
for that type of information. So, so essentially in 2015, it's kind of turned over. And now it's like, okay, I get to do the hiring.
Yeah.
You know, I get to position this. I want to do this a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And everyone was full steam ahead. And it took me about 3 to 4 months. Just, I don't know if you've ever heard like in sports where they say like when you go from college to NFL, like it's moving so fast, right? It takes you a little
Yeah.
bit of time for things to slow down.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like to me. Like there was a lot coming at me.
Yeah.
And I just had to keep slowing it down. And then and once I got my bearings and I realized like, man, he wasn't messing around either, at the time, like
Oh,
my
sure.
boss, so
Yeah.
so it's kind of so in 2015 that happened, and it's basically like I don't know what would have happened if that didn't happen, and I'm thankful today that it kind of did, because we've proved it, and we continue to prove it every day, that we are a great resource. But at that time, so you start to see this spin, and I go back to like 20 or 30 years ago to like, if you were running a marketing company, like I can't imagine how difficult it was to go back to your customer and say, this is working. Like how, it's just almost next to impossible to do what we can do now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's the analytics, here's the goals,
for sure.
here's the completions, and this is where we're at. And like, okay.
Yeah.
Now they're starting to, the belief is starting to really wind up.
Well, and part of the problem is there's so many different points at which it needs to work. We talk about this on the agency side, that sometimes we won't get the end result, but it's something down funnel, right? We'll do everything we're supposed to do, make the bell ring, but if the sales team doesn't close the deal. And there was a time when you really couldn't prove that. It was, he said, she said, no, it didn't. Yes, it did. And now it's like the data say that, we kind of filled the funnel for you. And what happened after that is, not our responsibility, right?
Exactly.
So it's a different day. It also is a challenge because it also exposes when it doesn't work. You can see,
right.
Hey, what we did really didn't work.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you hit the nail like right on that. That's right where I was going. So that's 2015. So 2016, I'm like, okay, I need more data. I need more support.
Yeah.
And the only way to get that is to show these guys like we're capturing more leads. The sales team's more effective. We're getting better leads. So I told you earlier on, like the CRM system we were using, it wasn't CRM.
Sure.
Right? It was names.
Yeah.
And we didn't really hold accountability to properly using it. Right.
Yeah.
So 2016, I go all in, and I'm like, okay. So I go and ask for a large sum of money from the ownership, and I'm like, here's what I want to do. I'm gonna change the way we're doing everything, and it's not just what I'm asking for from the money side. It's a change in our process, and we all know like asking people to change their daily routine.
Sure.
It's a great company. It's a family-owned company, and a lot of people have been there for a long time because it's a great place to work, right?
Yeah.
But when you ask people to change, it's tough. But I went and did all the research I could, and I wanted to install Salesforce.com, the CRM system, into our business.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of arguments that instilled it, because it's a premium product, right?
It's costly.
It's costly.
Yeah. It's worth it, but it's costly. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
And so I liken it to our own product. Like, are you telling me we wouldn't buy our own product?
Yeah.
Because we sell at a premium product,
Yeah.
everything that we do. And,
Yeah.
and you start to look at, here's the value that they provide. Here's what they say you can do. And it's really kind of on us to do it. Now, we have to be diligent in putting in all the right resources into place and capturing the data.
Yeah.
So I finally agreed to do it. And Salesforce was great to work with. They steered us a little bit wrong in one aspect, and they wanted us to put all of our companies and divisions in one instance, and they wanted us to break them out by record types. And so we listened. It saved us a lot of money up front, but on the back end for the programming side, we kept getting hamstrung by these record types. Like I couldn't install one thing for like one of the divisions to do.
So was that a problem because the companies were too different and you didn't have the customization you needed?
Exactly. And a couple of the companies they're almost competitive to some degree. And so you almost can't share some of that, some of the resources and leads and contacts across.
Is that a function of you've got a product that you're trying to sell and a product you're trying to lease?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So that was a big one. So 2016, that was our home run, right?
Yeah.
And man, the work that was involved, like the migration alone. We're talking like months to get this done.
Yeah.
And then, and we roll it out, and we think, okay, that was the hard part. No. Asking people to change.
Yeah.
The way that they're doing everything and focus was so different.
Especially if they've had success in what they're doing. It's exponentially easier to get people to change when they're hitting their head against the wall and not getting anywhere. when you're saying, hey, I know what we're doing is working, this is going to work better, that's much more difficult.
And I underestimated it. I really did.
Yeah.
I felt like everyone would just get on board, because that's kind of what I did my whole life and my whole career.
Sure.
If someone says we're doing something, I mean, I didn't really want to bale hay at 5:30 for 5 hours, you know, but that's what they said we were doing. So that's what we're doing.
Sure.
You know? So I underestimated that section, that part of it. And I started getting a little bit more outside counsel from some people who did this, and they said, listen, you're in like over your head if you don't get them to use it.
Wow.
Like you paid for
it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're not gonna use it properly, you'll never be able to get the ROI from it.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I started to realize this is a big deal. Like this is a really big deal. So myself and the software engineer that helped roll this whole thing out, like we could only do so much. And we put some processes in play, and the year we started getting there, and we started getting more support from the management, from the sales directors, and a couple of divisions were really good, and a couple were laggards. And then you start to see the ones that were really good. It's like, well, here's the data. I mean, we're talking about data that would take us weeks to get before. Yeah. I'm able to crank out in 5 seconds. And so you start to see the ones that were, that transitioned and bought in. I mean, they start taking off. Yeah. And again, just like you said, like it's hard to change when you are having success, right? Yeah. But I kept telling like, we're going to compound your successes like with the data. And that's, so by about mid 2017, we were full scale in, we had the buy-in, and now we're starting to generate. Yeah. And we're starting to get, we're starting to follow the leads all the way through. Yeah. Like here's where we captured it from. It's in its own bucket. It's coming here, and then I kind of left out the part where like we had to kind of go back to the drawing board because those record types were really killing us. Yeah. So we had to break them all out. Yeah. But it wasn't nearly as bad as the first integration because all the information was there. It's just kind of breaking it out.
Well, and you'd gotten people used to Salesforce, so getting them to do it a different way was much less of an ask than installing in the first place. So let me back up for a second. And what I'd like you to tell us about is Tippmann Affiliated Group. I think people know the entities within it, but because it's, sort of a family holding company, people, when they hear that name, they might not know what it means. So how do you describe the organization you work for and the work you do for it?
Sure. So Tippmann Affiliated Group is not to be confused with Tippmann Group, the Tippmann Group, right? So there's our founder, Vincent Tippmann, and his brother, John Tippmann. They started building warehouses, cold storage warehouses in the 70s. Yeah. And they kind of had a differing minds on which way they wanted to go. Do we want to build these and manage them, or do we just want to build them? Right. So they went their own ways. Yep. So it's just kind of, that's the Tippmann Group, and they do very well. They build warehouses. Yep. They still manage them, but they build some of the top-notch like cold storage warehouses across the United States, North America. Wonderful people as well. So that's them, and they own Interstate Warehousing. We own Interstate Cold Storage. Okay. So again, it's a little confusing to a lot of people, right? Sure. So Interstate Cold Storage was one of the first companies that Vince had that kind of made it, this long distance. He had a handful of companies, but Interstate Cold Storage is one of his flagships, right? So we have 2 cold storage warehouses here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We have 1 in Napoleon, and we have 2 in Columbus, Ohio. Okay. So there's 5 total. And it's refrigerated space. Like you see the reefer trailers on the highway. They're looking for product to store. Like it's anyone that's in food manufacturing, EDs, they're looking for a place to hold all that ice cream before it hits the stores. So great business, been in it for a long time. We have a great reputation. But that's one of the ones that's the original, right? And then Polar King International, we're looking at 40 years this year. So
was that an acquisition?
Okay. Polar King was Vincent's brother Joe kind of came up with this concept. Joe moved his family to South Dakota, and was working some oil fields. And Vince had owned a couple pool companies, and he was very prevalent, and he knew what he was doing with fiberglass, right? But Joe had these like cooling towers that he was doing out in the oil fields for in North Dakota. And him and Vince said, well, if you flip that thing upside down, put a door on it, it'd be a pretty cool walk-in cooler and freezer, right? But again, like, they saw things that we didn't, you know. Yeah. So he started that in 1982, owns the patent on it's the only outdoor fiberglass walk-in cooler freezer, one piece, modular design on the market. And it's funny, like the first show he went to, the first National Restaurant Association show he went to, this guy who just kept pacing up and down the aisle and shaking his head. And Vince finally said, well, what's going on? He said, well, I own this other walk-in manufacturer. He said, that's my idea. And Vince said, oh, is that a fact? He goes, no, it should have been my idea, you know? And he didn't accuse him of taking his idea. He said, I've been in this industry for 40 years. I should have came up with that idea.
So he's mad at himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Polar King, it's become it's a wonderful business. Anywhere, we started pretty heavy in food service, and now you come across all the different industries that we're in: pharmaceutical, hospitality, primary, secondary education, anywhere with a cold storage need. There's manufacturing plants building, like they need to hold hazardous gases and all these types of products, and they need walk-ins. And we never, I think early on, I didn't think we realized how big the market would become for refrigeration.
So why would someone choose to buy or lease a unit outside of the facility instead of build it in the facility? Is it when you've run out of space inside? Is it when you need temporary? Is it all of those things?
It's all of those things. Yeah. Like in restaurants, like the most expensive square footage is back of house. It's And so why would you take up that area like a walk-in when you could just be butted up to the building or outside the building? But there's a litany of reasons on why.
Sure.
And it can be a tough sell.
Yeah.
It can be a really tough sell at times. And there's some people who say, listen, I'm in a strip mall. I'm not on an end cap. I have to have it indoors.
Yeah.
And
for
we
sure.
say, okay.
Yeah.
And we just said, well, we're not the right one for you.
Sure.
So multiple, there's a lot of different industries, a lot of different needs. So and that's what our sales guys do a great job of identifying those up front.
Yep.
And we tell them, like, if you don't have an opening in your like building big enough to take it, then it's going to be outside.
Oh, sure.
But Polar King is an established, like I said, premier walk-in. We do, I guess we can talk about a lot of different things in that regard, but they've become our manufacturing arm for two other divisions now. So we have Polar Leasing, which the name is kind of goofy because we don't really lease them, we rent them. You can rent it for 3 days, you can rent it for a week.
Just might be for an event.
A lot of people use them for like right now, travel's pretty big between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so a lot of restaurants need added storage. And they don't want to take more trucks during the day, so they're willing to pay for that walk-in for a month, 2 months. This is our busiest time of year in regards to our operations. We've got the most units out, and but the summer months are typically the busiest for our sales team.
Sure,
because it's hot, and that's when refrigeration falters. So they're always looking for emergency needs. So, and then Polar King Mobile is a new trailer division that we've created right at the beginning of COVID. So it's wonderful to try to create a new business. But it's gone well, and I think it kind of grew a little faster than we thought we would. And it's the first business that we're kind of going through a dealer network.
Okay.
So we're using mainly NATDA, which is the North American Trailer Dealers Association. So we're trying to put these trailers, on the ground in all different areas of the United States, North America. So if people say, they call us, we've built trailers for years, custom, and this is a standardized product. Okay. And so if they call and they say, hey, I want to build a trailer, and, our salespeople say, well, it's, probably, 6 to 8 to 10 weeks out, but we can build it for you. Yeah. Now, if you want to give up a little bit of that customization, there's a 120 volt 15 amp unit
Yeah.
on the ground in Arizona right
Yeah.
now that you can drive to your dealer and pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it's been everything that we do, we sell direct,
Mm-hmm.
and this has been the first foray into like
Okay.
a dealer network.
Yeah.
And it's been enlightening. It's been I've been pretty heavily involved in it, and just again with Polar Leasing and Polar King Mobile owning the manufacturer, it changes everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of people who would like to be doing
Especially with like supply chain issues
Yeah.
that have come up in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really good. So yeah, and hitting on that, like our owners, like amazing. Like right when this stuff all started,
Yeah.
they kind of saw the writing on the
Mm-hmm.
wall, and we made the decision to go inventory heavy, like really heavy. Like
Yep.
they really did it well.
Yeah.
And kudos to them for that, because I think they realized like now's our opportunity to go, like we can go get more business now,
Yeah.
and we
Oh,
can
sure.
take that market.
So they started
share.
as an opportunity instead of a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had the warehouse, like we have the space, like we have plenty of space, and we loaded up the building with inventory, and it's been amazing. Like we're taking market share now, and now like my big thing is from obviously for the markets is like, let's not give it back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're pretty high on customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big one for us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've evolved to now is how do we do this and do it right?
So you're doing that with training? Are you doing that with, different approaches to hiring? Are you doing it with everything?
Everything,
Yeah.
like everything that we do, and I mean, it's not like hard.
It's not rocket science.
No, it's really not. It's just
Yeah.
it's doing.
Yeah.
Right. We answer the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Like we get reports. The reports are sent out monthly, and you don't want to be in that report like under a 96%
Yeah.
answer rate. Like
Yeah.
if because you're going to get a little
Yeah.
you
Sure.
get a little discussion,
Yeah.
if you will. But we're huge on it. Like just answering the phone is huge. Calling people back, emailing, like, would you prefer a text? Would you, just asking the people like,
Yeah.
what works best for you? But we're big on it. Like our service department, we check in with the people. We're constantly trying to keep them, and that's another industry that's on its head right now. The service, HVAC, like so hard to find like good companies that will go and do what they said. Like I'll be there Tuesday at 2:00.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you tell the customer. That's what they're expecting.
Well, from the customer perspective, it's like, I'm trying to give you money, make it easy for me to do that.
Right.
And you would think that would be easy, but today it's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like anything's easy these days, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a big one, and that's kind of what, like, those are some of the projects that we're working on right now, like,
Yeah.
that I think are going to be pretty big for us.
So you're working with multiple brands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of likens it to like what you do. We're I just tell everyone like we're the in-house agency
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Tippmann Affiliate Group. Like, so we service Thermodyne, we service Polar Leasing,
Yeah.
and so when we built this department, we built it all under Advanced Media. So now through our project management software, we use ClickUp. It's phenomenal. We use Basecamp for years.
Yeah.
And then one of my peers, he's just like, I think there's a better way to do this. And he did an A+ job, like knocked it out of the park, and went and got this ClickUp, and it's been wonderful. So like at the end of the month, one of the guys pulls the reports and he submits all of our hours to each division, and that's how we're basically paid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
So it's a ticketing system. Yeah.
yeah, essentially. But it's more than that. It's like you can DM, you can do like everything within it. Like it's
Yep.
just project management. It's
Okay.
like everything that we work on, whether it's a video, animation,
Yep.
all that good stuff goes in there. And
Yeah.
like that's where I have two screens basically going at all times. One's my email, because I get a lot of outside emails from other departments
Yeah.
and other people, and then I've got my project management software
Yep.
where my team is basically, that's where they live.
So how many people on your team, or the teams you work with, how many people are you responsible for?
There's 6 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we've got, so kind of going back to like the Salesforce
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when we rolled it out, we did a pretty good job. And then I was looking for, so it's 2017-ish when we felt like we turned the corner.
Yeah.
I was looking for some help in the digital marketing world. Like I wanted to get better with AdWords. I wanted to get better with like just any campaign that we're doing. I wanted to, I wanted to funnel everything through so we could
Yep.
start doing a better job. And I needed someone to help with that. And so I put that out, and then I have this interview, and I'm just gonna say her name, Corey. Like, I have this interview with her. She's the first person I interviewed. And I'm like, man, like I want to hire her on the spot, and you don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
You're like, you can't,
Sure.
But her digital marketing like skills were fantastic.
And this is 2017, you said? And that's
Yeah.
pretty rare at that time.
Yeah. But on the flip side, she's like, I'm a Salesforce administrator. Like, I'm dialed. And I was like, okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
She knows her stuff.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that her and I are like kind of like, we're very similar, but she's just, I mean, she's open. She's just like, she's Southern. She's from Virginia. She's
Yeah.
got the Southern charm.
Yeah.
She can work so well with our teams. And like, it's just, I felt like I was like, I need to hire her.
Yeah.
For that reason alone, for the Salesforce side.
Yeah.
And I go and interview 15 other people
Yeah.
at the time, and a month later I call her and I was like, do you want this job or not? And she's
Yeah.
like, heck yeah. She's like,
Yeah.
what took you so long?
Yeah.
And I was like, and I told her, I was like, I wanted to hire you on the spot.
Yeah,
I was like,
sure.
but I probably would have got in some serious,
Well, you have to
hot
do your
water
due
for that.
diligence.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, so she came on, and she has just taken it to another level for us. And that's just like what I didn't realize, like, at the time, like, that it could even be done, but she's just completely taken off.
Yeah.
And I love it. We absolutely love it. So, like, we just funnel so much data,
Yeah.
so much intelligence through this system now. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to pivot to a few questions to sprint to the finish line. And I'm going to throw you a curveball because of something you just said. But the first one, it sounds like you've had some really good mentors over the years and you've learned a lot. Even though you've worked for the same company your entire career, you've learned a lot and you've worked with different brands, you've worked on different teams. What's your biggest takeaway from that in terms of career advice? Like, if you're talking to one of your kids or you're talking to someone who's just getting started, what would you say to them is the key to career success and fulfillment?
Like, in marketing in general, or just like any?
Either one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I think obviously hard work and perseverance are huge. I really do. I think I tell my kids this, like, now, like if you look around sometimes, like, all you have to do is outwork this group.
Yeah.
And to me, it doesn't seem that hard.
Yeah.
And so I just tell them, like always, like, listen, like, listen to other people. Like, there's so many people out there that are willing to share information with you. And there's a lot of good people out there.
Yeah.
That can do that. And it can't all come from, obviously, you're a parent, your dad, it can't always all come from us.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I always tell people, like, do what you want to do. Like, march to the beat of your drum.
Yeah.
Like not mine.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And then marketing in general, like I just think it's a fascinating time to be, like, in marketing. Like,
Yeah.
There's so much, well, it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. Like, every time that they roll out, like, a new social media platform, it's like, well, great.
Yeah.
Like, and because we're B2B, like, so I don't like we're there.
Yeah, sure.
But we're not having transactions.
Yeah,
You know what I
sure.
mean? But if we're not there,
Yeah.
it says something.
Yeah,
Right?
For sure. Well, it's a credibility issue. I mean,
It really
I
is.
tell clients, I said, the reason why, if you're B2B and you have a Facebook page, it's not really for the posting, it's for the credibility. It's a landing page so people can find you. And sure, you can do some things with posts to connect with your stakeholders, but it's really about being discoverable there.
That's right.
But you're not going to probably sell a lot of your product on Facebook. Yeah.
But branding, right?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
But no, I think I love it. Like, I think there's like literally like no end in sight.
Well, you can really, the easy part is that you can pretty much do anything. The hard part is deciding what to do, right? There's infinite possibilities.
Correct.
But there's not infinite budgets. By the way, if you have an infinite budget, please call me. But nobody has infinite budgets. It's like and the biggest constraint is time, right? It's the fact that if you had more time, probably the best investment is to spend more time with your customers, learning from them, listening to them. but there's 24 hours in a day. So, and you have to do all the things that are required to sell the product. So it's the best time ever and the worst time ever simultaneously.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just fun.
Yeah.
Like I love it.
Yeah.
And what we do, and it's I've never worked for a marketing agency, right? But I kind of say I do now.
Yeah.
But it's something new every day.
Yeah. Well, it's full-time problem solving. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And off, because we're marketers, we're going to find marketing solutions, but sometimes it leads you to other insights that affect other parts of the business. And I think that's where it's the most fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Second question, and this is where I'm going to throw your curveball. I was going to ask you about a myth or misconception, but I'm going to throw that out the window. Sounds like you've hired some good people and you've kept them. What have you learned about, at a time when it's really difficult to do, what have you learned about employee retention? In other words, how do you keep good people? You can't always be the employer choice in terms of pay.
Yeah.
You can't, as you're a big business, but it's still a family business. You can't out benefit some of the major companies that allow people to work virtually. So what do you do to keep people?
That's a great question. And so there's kind of a couple of answers there. So when I ran the operations for managing blue collar work is like it. I gained this ability to read people really well, and I really feel like it was a great experience for me just because of that. So I kind of take a lot of what I learned there.
Yeah.
And I would never go back to that either.
Yeah. Well, it's hard work.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And you really want to talk about trying to retain people.
Yeah.
That's tough. And anyone who's good at that is worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, for sure.
So our team, they've been around, most of them, for some time. And it's I do my best to build a culture of what I would want to be around.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're spending a lot of time with each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously we have to get the work done, right? But we do, I think we just like each other. And I think we like to see the successes from each other. And it is hard because obviously there's no open pocketbook that you can just keep paying people.
Yeah.
But I try to just build a culture of what I like to be around and a place where I like to work. And I let them be them. Like one thing I know I don't do is micromanage. But I hired most of these people for a reason. Like there was some people on the team that were underqualified and had people that had better qualifications or could have possibly done the job better. But I didn't have the connection, and I didn't think what they were going to bring to our team was going to be good. So that's the first thing. That's to me the most important part of our team is the culture and how are we getting along? Because if that's good, there's so much that can be done.
Oh, sure. Well, the phrase that's out there right now is people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. I think people leave people, right? If somebody leaves a job, it's because they didn't feel connected, they didn't feel supported, they didn't feel like they fit in. And if you can turn that on its head and create an environment that allows different personalities to find fulfillment in what they do and that respects their life outside of work, that sounds pretty easy, but it's pretty great.
For sure.
Some really great things can happen.
And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm doing a lot more servant leadership. Right? I am always open to sometimes my door's closed, but they know all they gotta do is knock.
Sure.
I'm here for them.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about individually a lot. What can I or the company be doing better to make you feel like you're getting more growth, or where do you want to be, or are there things that so-and-so's doing or I'm doing that you would like to do or grow into?
Yeah.
And if so, let's move some things around and let's do that.
Yeah,
I want them to feel like they're getting growth.
Yeah.
And they're learning and they're being a part of the team.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something that happens as you get a little older, and I'm a little older than you, probably a lot older, but where you start to become more interested in helping the people who you're leading, helping them grow than in your own growth. You,
Right.
you still want to learn, you still want to grow, but if I've got time to spend, I'd rather invest it in someone who's got a huge ceiling than me, where I've only got so much ceiling. Got to bump it
Absolutely.
up against it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's really fulfilling when you have people who have shown a commitment. They've been dedicated to doing the work, and now it's like, all right, there's potential in you that you may not even see in yourself. Let's spend some time on that.
I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. That's right. I think some people don't even realize the potential that they have.
Yeah.
Right. And I was the same way.
Same with me, and that's where I discovered it, is when I saw other people investing in me. I was like, you sure you want to spend time on me?
Bingo.
So I think it's great to be on the other side of that. For
Absolutely.
Sure. All right, last question, and you may have kind of answered this, but feel free to add something new. I always ask people on the marketing side, what is a tip, a trick, a tool, a hack, something you use that gives you kind of a sixth gear, or maybe it's a fifth and a half gear. It doesn't have to be that profound, but something that's important to you that you think deserves a little bit of promotion or amplification.
I thought a lot about this.
And it doesn't have to be a technology tool. For some people, it's an app. For some, it's something analog, but just something that's important to your day-to-day work.
I think like what we've talked about a lot is like in marketing, we need to listen, right? So one of the tools, and I'll plug Research. Research turned me onto this probably about 6 or 7 years ago. They did a little bit of outsourced work for us on a website. We were bottled up, and he did some work for us. But I told him about some things I wanted to do in regards to a few. I'm trying to think of the best way. Like we had a handful of different salespeople, but we were trying to position them to look like they were more in those regions. They covered more of a geographic region. And he says, "Well, I've got a tool for you. Let's look at this." So it's a tool called CallRail. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't. No.
Okay, so CallRail is basically it's a vanity phone number system, right? You put in a phone number, and you can make it look like you're in Arizona. It's calling our headquarters in Fort Wayne, and it's going right to Susan, who handles that geography, right? So he turns me on to it, and I'm like, all right, that totally does what I need it to do, and so we built it into the website. He's like, hey, I'm going to hand it over to you. It's, you're going to sign up for it because you're going to manage it.
Sure.
So, okay. So I get possession of it, and I start opening the system. I'm like, wait a minute, there's so much more here than just vanity phone numbers, right?
Yeah.
So it records every phone call. It tells you length. There's a piece called conversational intelligence. So like I can mark keywords, whether it's like the trailer division or certain keywords that I'm looking to know like what the salespeople are saying. And it breaks it all out in transcripts and everything. Like, so it gives me the ability to listen to the call. How are we handling it? It gives me better tools for training when we onboard people. And it tells me exactly like what campaigns I'm doing, how effective are they, how many people are calling these numbers.
Yeah.
Like, so it's great for like when we still do a lot of print advertising.
Yeah.
When my print advertisers come in and say, hey, well, we're going to probably have to up the spend from last year, or here's your cost for this year. I said, well, here's the calls I got from your, like, it wasn't that good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, let me go back. Let me go back to the drawing board. So it's CallRail is like, to me, it's a wonderful tool, and this obviously like there's so many out there.
Oh, sure.
But I used it a lot.
Well, especially from the training standpoint. I've done this much customer service training, and it's very different when you can make it somewhat objective and share with the team, hey, here's a call. You break it down.
Yes.
Instead of theoretical, here's what you would do if you're ever. Yeah. So that's huge alone. So, all right. Well, you are the first person to recommend CallRail.
It's great.
Right. Well, that's great.
I strongly suggest using it.
All right. Well, really good answer, and really good answers overall.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for doing this, Rob. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me.
And thanks to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.